yet?
Yes, how's things?
All right, well...
I was just doing...
maybe it's the absence of the suit.
Even though we're taking evidence from you in committee, I'm here with several hats on. I'm just doing a bit for Albury's crowd, Global Commons Institute. I'm here with the Environmental Audit Committee, Albury Mayor. And I'm quite pleased, actually, of being a pro-contraction convergence person myself, that a lot of people here are now coming to that view. Perhaps more so in NGOs than in governments, but even governments are showing a lot more interest. There's a guy we were talking to yesterday who used to be the head of the Japanese delegation to COP, and now...
See, my worry about that is that the inequity of the past, I think, imply that rich countries should probably have zero rights for a while.
Well, when would that start? That's the trouble. If you're converging over a period of time, then you don't have to have an immediate response, which implies that, I don't think.
See, I have worries with the idea that there's equal rights to damage the commons as opposed to equal rights to enjoy the commons. So I think it's actually not radical enough.
Well, what would be more radical?
Well, I think rich countries should have zero rights for a while because of the contribution they've made over history. And that the next 30 or 40 years is the kind of time period of 50 years we should be talking about.
As a negotiating position, that's going to be even more difficult than CNC, isn't it?
But we're talking not about negotiating positions at this point in this ethical argument. We're talking about what is the right kind of thing to be thinking about. This is logically prior to negotiating positions, a different kind of discussion. Now, we live in the real world, and negotiating positions really do matter. And I think a bit of clarity on the ethics is very important.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I was just talking to this Turkish guy about their contribution.
We're not on any sort of record here, are we?
Well, we're filming for... I mean, you don't want it on the record.
Well, no, we're just having a nice, quiet chat.
We are having a quite...
I wouldn't want to see it beamed around all over the place, otherwise...
No. Okay, well, in that case, we'll say it's off the record.
Yeah, it's off the record.
Off the record. I mean, this is interesting. Zero rights. I mean, we're looking at the
You can argue negative. You can argue negative rights, and some, for example, the Indian delegation are arguing exactly that. You see, it's a difference between flows and stocks. And the flow, emissions each year, and the history of the stocks have to be considered together, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. But practically, I think we're going to have to converge in terms of emissions.
Yes. By 2050, we'll all have to be around 2 tons per capita. But that's not the same as emissions rights, and it's very important to be a bit more clear-headed about this, I think.
I agree. Have you just recently done a paper on that?
I included it in some of it in my American Economic Review paper, which was published in May. I'm going to be a bit more of it in my book, which is coming out at the end of March, beginning of April.
What would be the practical steps then to get to your preferred option?
It's clarity on what are the ethical arguments that we're putting, and I think that to assert that there's a right to emit is entirely unclear to me in its ethical foundations. A right to development, a right to shelter, a right to energy. These are different kinds of questions. But a right to emit is a right that's being claimed not to enjoy the commons, but to damage the commons.
Isn't that really rather a semantic point?
No, it's not. It's a very important point, because it means that when you come to discuss emissions rights, you should be more open and indeed arguably more ambitious.
Because, I once asked you a question at the RSA a couple of years ago about this very point. Given that we all have to emit, that is
no, we don't have to emit.
Well, we breathe out CO2.
Yes, but net we don't. I mean, there's lots we can do.
No.
There's lots we can do.
But I would say that it's a good starting point.
We're all going to celebrate your right to breathe. Don't worry about that.
Good. Yeah, well, there's a bit more than just the right to breathe. The right to breathe, of course, in terms of CO2 is neutral. but it does lead into other areas of thought, which I think...
But we're trying to break the link between energy and emissions, right?
Well, absolutely right, yeah. And
do you know Colin Challen? This is Chris Taylor who's working with you.
Hi, good to see you, Colin Challen MP. Yeah, but even if you have this ethical understanding, how does it translate into practical policy?
I'm opening the ethics. I'm not narrowing it down. So I don't understand the arguments for narrowing it down in the way you're describing. And I actually would be more ambitious in terms of rights.
But it has to have a practical application.
Yeah, in terms...
And how do you convince developing countries that have been shafted so many times by our ethical and charitable instincts?
But I'm supporting India. I mean, I'm speaking with the Indian delegation here.
It's the practical. I mean, as an elected politician, one has to see the. I mean, I can see the ethical argument there, definitely.
But the bargain that we eventually...
How does it become part of this?
I think that the rich countries declare for at least 80%.
Yeah.
And reductions by 2050, and we have to look for quite substantial support beyond simply the trading that would come out from that.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Good. I shall have to look at your... I've got a book coming out shortly.
Good to see you.
It's not optimistic, as will be evident from the title.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about it must be the absence of a suit or something. The first time I've seen you.
Yeah, it's the absence. I've decided I'm here. This is my last day. I'm having a dress down day. I was in the suit all week. So
well, no, good for you. I wish I had
anyway, good seeing you again.
See you, Colin.
Yeah.